Black Bag is a spy thriller where we follow British intelligence agent George Woodhouse, played by Michael Fassbender. He gets tipped off that someone in his agency leaked a dangerous piece of malware to enemy intelligence, forcing him to snuff out the rat in his ranks. With the possibility that the traitor could be his own wife, Catherine, played by Cate Blanchett, his loyalty is left in question of whether or not it favors his wife over his country. Not going to dig too much deeper than that to avoid spoilers, but the recurring subject throughout this movie is in fact loyalty. We follow two lovers who are perceived as the perfect couple, but it's questionable just how perfect their marriage is, and that question is one of the things that keeps the movie interesting. The loyalty of those around them is also in question. Similarly, it's not just about how loyal they are to their country, but also how loyal they are in their respective relationships. The 6 main characters consist of 3 different couples, and they're all sort of friends, which is a common progression for colleagues that are forced to spend so much time with each other. The movie is scandalous, but thanks to the performances and well-written dialogue, it never feels like it's veering into soap opera territory. It's dramatic without feeling like cheeky melodrama. The dialogue is sometimes a bit sexually charged, but it's thankfully not too explicit or perverted. The movie is very mature about its use of sexual themes. The scandalous nature of these characters makes their loyalty questionable overall. It raises the question, since they are duplicitous in one avenue of their life, what other avenues of their life could they be hiding things? It's always a question of morality. This movie questions the integrity of people who seemingly always have the power to cover their tracks. It asks, but why be honest when you can just get away with being dishonest? Our characters all work together, but in different parts of the agency. Despite the close connections they have with each other and with their partners, there are aspects of their work that they have to keep confidential. It would be considered treason to disclose certain things to one another, so when asked where they were or what they were doing, they simply say, Black Bag, which is essentially code for that's classified. It's kind of slow burn-like without being a slow burn. The movie takes place over the course of 7 days, with George trying to snuff out the culprit in that time. But it's not really tense. You're not sitting there thinking, oh God, is he gonna pull this off in time? You're more so thinking, oh God, what's gonna happen next to stir up this manhunt? Even though these characters are friendly with each other, nothing feels sacred. Every conversation feels like it has the potential to go south. Part of that is because George takes his job very seriously, so much so that he hardly feels like a real person. For better or worse, we will get into that later. But he always has his underlying motive of trying to find the traitor. He's very competent when it comes to reading people, and he's always covertly questioning people. His subhuman nature is carried by the piercing gravitas of Michael Fassbender, aka the king of turtleneck sweaters. The subtlety of his performance is perfect for the character and his poker face. Not being able to read him throughout the movie is a big deal, since one of the big questions is, does he value his loyalty to his wife over his loyalty to his country? So the thing that makes this movie really smart to me is how clever it is with its use of foreshadows, symbolism, and double entendres. They will lead you to believe that the movie is going one of a few different directions, so that by the time it ends, it will leave you thinking, damn, I did not see that coming. In the climax of the film, it's not like a lowbrow plot twist or anything. It's not gonna leave you thinking, damn, well that was stupid. There's no way that I could have seen that coming. It's a thriller and it's properly constructed as such. And one of the things that makes watching a thriller so entertaining is just looking for all the little clues and trying to solve it. The movie gives you everything you need to solve it, but the misdirection is so strong that it will leave you thinking that you're a smart and perceptive moviegoer who's on the verge of figuring it out, and then it will dupe you in the end. It'll get you so good that it actually almost just feels dirty. Like the ending didn't make my head explode or anything. It was kind of just like, oh, all right. You got me. For that reason, I don't know if I can recommend this to casual moviegoers or really just any minimally engaged viewers. It really hinges on the viewer thinking about the layers beneath everything. I was really expecting this to be more like a popcorn action movie, but no. I'm not gonna say that there was no action in the movie, but well, honestly, there was actually like no action in the movie, which is fine. I will take an interesting plot over excessive explosions and fight scenes any day. I like dialogue-heavy movies, and this is definitely one of them. This is certainly where it will lose a lot of viewers, not just because of how much dialogue it has, but also because of how articulate the dialogue often is and the excessive amount of agency jargon. I like to think that I can swiftly decode a word salad, but I'm not gonna lie to you and say that I understood literally every line in this movie. Some of it is pretty convoluted just because of the agency jargon. And speaking of convoluted, the plot does get pretty convoluted near the end of the second act. I'm not saying that I was confused. I understood the plot. I feel the need to clarify that just because often when you call something convoluted on the internet, people mistake that for calling it incomprehensible. I got the movie, I'm just calling it convoluted to drive the point home that it demands your full attention. To clarify, I even thought that it was really actually the perfect level of convoluted. It gives you a lot to think about and it feels more authentic. These agents are very cunning, so realistically, whatever plan they have in motion should be thorough enough to deceive the average person. So when someone calls a movie convoluted, don't be a comment section king who's all like, oh, it's perfectly comprehensible unless, of course, you're a person of feeble wits such as yourself. So coming out of the theater, there was a couple behind me and they were talking about the movie. He asks her what she thought of it and she said, it was okay. I didn't really like any of the characters though. So a lot of the time when I hear a criticism like that, it gets under my skin a little bit just because there are plenty of great movies out there with dislikable characters. I don't really think it matters if a character is likable. I think it matters if a character is interesting. And sometimes what makes a character interesting is how loathsome they are. All that said, after hearing that and thinking about it on the drive home, I started to really think about the characters in this movie. And I thought, you know, the characters in this movie actually really aren't that interesting. Sure, their situations are interesting, but they themselves were not all that interesting character-wise. One could argue that's just because they're very career-focused people, but isn't that kind of lackluster? Real question, have you ever been on a date with someone and all they talked about was work? No hobbies, interests, travels, past experiences, friends, fun or relatable things, just their job. They make for a pretty mediocre date. I'm definitely not saying that this movie overall was like a dreary date. It was much more interesting. I generally liked it, but there are a mentionable number of back-to-back-to-back scenes that could be compared to a dreary date. The group scenes were the ones that really shined when all 6 of them were on screen. There's lots of chatter that isn't exclusively about work. For example, there's this long dinner scene in the first act that really gives us a feel for who these characters are at their core. Things feel so much more personal because everyone feels very human. A lot of the one-on-one scenes felt like they were missing that. They were very plot-focused, revolving around work, which sure, that is screen time spent productively, but in the end, everyone just kind of felt two-dimensional. It's really hard to care about what's happening when we don't care all that much about what happens to our characters due to them being flat, so the stakes just don't really feel as high. As strange as this might sound, I really think that more ordinary conversation or statements about who these characters are beyond their work and their sex lives would add more layers to them. That would make them more interesting and in turn, the movie. It just sometimes feels like we're watching empty archetypes of characters rather than actual characters. With the exception of Clarissa, played by Marissa Abella, she has a human personality. She's very quirky and lively. I loved every bit of her on screen. All that said, the movie still had a lot going on that I really liked. The script is very well crafted. It cleverly feeds you ideas of what direction the movie is going in with its double entendres and red herrings, so it will likely surprise you in the end. I'll put this one at the bottom end of it's good. If you're looking for a really brainy thriller that you can sink your teeth into, you might really like this one. But if you're expecting an easy to watch spy thriller with sick fight scenes and explosions, this is absolutely not the movie you are looking for. Thanks for watching this review. If it brought you any value at all, please give it a like. It really does help the channel grow. I'll see you later this week with my review of Opus.